Welcome to our channel, Story and Me. Let's begin with today's story, The Strange Form. I didn't set out looking for the darkness. It found me in the moments I was most alone. Late one empty night, I was hunched over my desk in a pool of monitor light, scrolling aimlessly. That's when I stumbled on a forum post, buried deep in a technology message board I frequented. The post's title was unassuming, almost bland. Looking for something different? Try the other side. Curiosity tugged at me, as it always did. I clicked. The thread was short, almost cryptic, filled with people discussing hidden corners of the internet, places you can't reach with a normal browser. They talked about secret links, a dark web beyond the light of Google and social media. One comment stood out immediately, sending a prickle of unease down my neck. If you find the right door, be careful. Some things can't be unseen. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. I was lonely, and this felt like an adventure, an escape from my flat, gray life. So I replied in the thread, asking how one might find these hidden corners. Almost instantly, a user with an abstract string of a username replied, "I'll show you. Download tour. Meet us at the Silk Road." The Silk Road? I knew vaguely of it. An infamous site on the dark web long shut down. Was it a joke or a code name for something else? Even though uncertainty gnawed at me, I followed the instructions. I downloaded the Tor browser, my heart drumming with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, and launched it. The screen went black. Then a green onion icon appeared, promising anonymity. With trembling fingers, I typed in the URL the user had sent me via a private message. It was a long string of random characters, ending in .onion, a hidden site, a hidden door. Into the rabbit hole. The site loaded slowly, as if hesitant to reveal itself. Finally, a bare-bones forum interface appeared. Dark background, simple white text, no graphics or logos, just a title at the top, The Hidden Web. I felt a strange thrill seeing it, as if I had peeled back one of reality's layers. Inside, people were discussing topics that made little sense at first. Cryptic threads about "the mirror sees more than you do" and "streams in the black." I clicked on one thread titled "Live Feed Tonight. Don't miss it." The posts underneath were a chain of anonymous comments. "It's happening at 3 a.m. GMT. Room 23 again? Number closer this time. I hear breathing." These messages set my nerves on edge. Breathing? Room 23. None of it made sense, yet it felt ominous. As I browsed further, a user with the handle Watcher posted a link. "Stream begins soon. Come prepared." I hovered over the link, feeling my mouth go dry. Part of me was repulsed, sensing that whatever awaited would not be pleasant. Yet a stronger part, the obsessive curiosity that had carried me this far, clicked it anyway. A black screen loaded with a simple video player. Nothing but darkness and the faint sound of static. I noticed the viewer count in the corner, climbing from 5 to 20 to 50. Others were here, waiting. In a small chat box beside the video, users typed messages. "What are we seeing tonight? Hope it's not another fake. Shh, just watch." Suddenly, the video feed flickered. My breath caught. The camera showed a dimly lit room. A basement or warehouse, perhaps. A single light bulb swung gently from the ceiling. Under its swaying light, a person sat on a chair, head down, face obscured by long hair. They weren't moving. Was it a recording or a live feed? My skin crawled as the camera zoomed slightly, almost imperceptibly, on the figure. The chat exploded with excitement. It's real. He's back again. Watch closely. I leaned in, heart pounding. The figure in the chair twitched, then started to raise their head. The stream quality was poor and grainy, but I could just make out eyes, wide, white eyes, reflecting the light, staring directly at the camera, or at us. A distorted voice crackled from my speakers, so sudden and garbled that I jumped. It sounded like a whisper slurred through an old radio. I couldn't tell what it said at first, just a noise that made my stomach knot. Then I realized it was repeating a phrase over and over. I see you. I see you. I see you. I slammed my laptop lid shut instinctively, heart racing, as if I'd just escaped something reaching through the screen. I sat in darkness, the laptop closed, my reflection faint on its glossy shell. My skin felt cold, and in the silence of my small apartment, I heard only my own ragged breathing. What was that? Some prank video? Or something worse? Minutes passed and my racing heart calmed. Caution warred with curiosity in my mind. At last, trembling, I opened the laptop again. The forum page was still there. The stream had ended or been cut off, and the chat was filled with reactions. Holy, did you hear it? Was it saying, I see you? So fake, LOL. Not fake. He's done this before. It's always unsettling. I should have walked away right then, closed everything, deleted Tor, and never looked back. But I was drawn further in by a morbid fascination and a strange sense of recognition in that whisper. I see you. It felt personal. Obsession and paranoia. That night marked the end of my peaceful sleep. I lay in bed with my mind churning. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that dark room, the figure on the chair, those eyes seeming to look straight at me. And that voice, it echoed in my head like a broken record. I see you. I see you. I started leaving a sticky note over my laptop's webcam, a flimsy attempt to reclaim some privacy. I wasn't even sure why. It just felt necessary. In the daylight, the whole episode seemed distant and surreal, like a half-remembered nightmare. I went to work as usual the next morning, bleary-eyed and distracted. The humdrum tasks of the day should have grounded me, but I found myself counting the hours until I could return to the forum to see if anything new had been posted. It became an obsession quickly. Each night, I plunged back into that forum on the dark web, seeking answers, or maybe just reliving the adrenaline of fear. There were other threads, people sharing morbid stories, trading what looked like encrypted coordinates to what I never found out, or posting images that were downright disturbing. I saw grainy photos of abandoned hospitals, occult symbols drawn on walls, distorted faces peering through windows. And throughout these threads, I noticed the user watcher again and again, leaving hints and guiding people toward more hidden things. I started to feel like Watcher was guiding me. Specifically, whenever I logged on, within minutes, a new message or link would appear in a thread I was reading, as if anticipating my next move. Some links led to puzzle-like pages with jumbled text or live cams of empty corridors that made my skin crawl, expecting a jump scare that never came. The tension was constant, a tightness in my chest, but I couldn't tear myself away. My apartment felt different too. The more nights I spent entrenched in darkness online, the more the real shadows in my room seemed to encroach. I often kept the lights off, only the pallid glow of the monitor painting the walls. At some point, I noticed I had stopped turning on the overhead lamp at all after sunset. Darkness felt natural, safer somehow, ironically safer, while I browsed the most unsafe parts of the net. By the third or fourth night, I started hearing things. It began with soft ticks and pops, normal house noises at night, but my frayed nerves turned them into footsteps or faint taps. Once, I could have sworn I heard a quiet chuckle behind me. I snapped my head around, heart lurching, only to see my empty living room lit weakly by the computer screen. I let out a shaky breath and laughed at myself, a brittle, nervous laugh. I was just jumpy, on edge from lack of sleep. Right. The hallucinations, or whatever they were, grew stronger with each passing midnight. Shadows in the corner of my eye seemed to dart away when I tried to look directly. I'd catch my reflection in the dark TV screen and see something behind me, just for a second, before it disappeared, always gone when I turned around. I started leaving the TV on, just to avoid the reflective blackness, even though it filled the apartment with a low static murmur. Amidst this creeping paranoia, I kept returning to the forum. I needed to know. Know what? I wasn't sure. Maybe the truth behind that video, behind Watcher, behind why I felt so targeted. Because increasingly, I felt like this dark web rabbit hole wasn't an accident at all. It felt intentional, like someone was dropping breadcrumbs meant for me alone. One night, I found a private message waiting for me on the forum. It was from Watcher. My pulse quickened as I clicked it open. Inside was just a single line. "Did you like the show?" My hands turned to ice. He knew I watched. Of course, the participant list might have shown a random alias, but I hadn't typed anything in the chat. I was just a silent observer. Still, he knew I was there. I stared at that message for a long time, debating if I should respond at all. Finally, I mustered the courage to type, "Who are you?" and hit send. Almost immediately, the reply came, "Watcher. Another explorer like you. Lonely like you." I felt a lump in my throat. Lonely like you. How did he? I hadn't told anyone on there anything personal. It was like Watcher could see right through the screen into my life. Or maybe I had posted something on the normal web about being lonely. I used to have a personal blog years ago, when I felt the need to scream my thoughts into the void. Could he have connected the dots somehow? I answered slowly, choosing each word. "What do you want?" It felt like I was talking to the darkness itself. The response came after a brief pause. "Watcher. To show you something. Something you won't find anywhere else." Another link followed, with no explanation. Before I clicked it, a deep sense of foreboding settled like lead in my stomach. My finger hovered over the trackpad. Every instinct screamed to close the laptop and run, to find sunlight and never return to this abyss. But then, if I did that, I would always wonder. Curiosity killed the cat, they say, but satisfaction brought it back. Some retort goes, I wasn't sure satisfaction was what waited behind that link. My gut said it was something far worse. And yet, I clicked. The website that knows. The new page was no forum. It was a pitch-black background with a single line of white text in the center and an input box blinking beneath it. The text said, "Who are you looking for?" I didn't understand. It looked like a search engine. But for what? On a whim, I typed my own name. I felt a little foolish. Maybe it was a site to look up people on the dark web. I pressed enter. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a progress bar appeared, as if it were searching. The page then populated a list of results, labeled in gibberish. I clicked the first result, and immediately I recognized the format. It was a social media profile. My social media profile. One I had deleted years ago after college, when I tried to purge my online presence. It was all there. My old photos, status updates, friends list, everything as it had been. But it wasn't on the original site. It was being hosted here, on this anonymous page in the dark. My heart began to thud. How was this possible? That profile had been erased, or so I thought. I clicked back and tried another result. This one was an image gallery. My stomach flipped as I saw a grid of images, pictures of me. Some I recognized from my own phone or old accounts, but others I had never seen before. Images of me walking on the street, browsing in a bookstore, sitting at a coffee shop looking at my laptop. Candid shots taken from a distance. My everyday life captured by who? When? I felt exposed, violated. My hands shook as they flew to cover my mouth. I fought the urge to leap up and look out the window, as if searching for the photographer. Absurd, since some of these were months or years old. Had someone been following me, collecting data on me? But why? Cold sweat trickled down my back as I clicked on a video file in the list, one of many. It loaded dark, shaky footage. The camera view was peering through a window. My apartment window. The angle was odd, but after a second I recognized it. The view from the big oak tree outside my living room. Through the wavering leaves, I saw myself inside, sitting on my couch, watching TV. Unaware. The date stamp on the video was from last year. I slammed my laptop shut again, nearly hyperventilating. This was no glitch, no trick. This was real. Someone had been spying on me, tracking me for a long time. My head spun with the implications. Could it have been Watcher? Or was Watcher just leading me to what someone else compiled? Eventually, I forced myself to open the laptop again, hands trembling violently. The site was still there, patiently waiting. I clicked another result, one that looked like a plain text file. It opened to an extensive log of my life. My name, birth date, schools, jobs, addresses, relationships, even things I had never posted anywhere. I saw a line about a childhood pet. I never told anyone online about the stray cat I befriended in 4th grade. There were notes about medical procedures I'd had. A broken arm at age 12, a tonsillectomy at 7. Details gleaned from where? Medical records? Personal journals? This data was thorough and deeply personal. One line made my blood run cold. User has been accessing hidden content over 5 days. Right under it was today's date and a timestamp from a few minutes ago. They knew I was here, reading this, right now. A chat bubble icon blinked at the bottom corner of the site. A familiar handle. Watcher. My stomach lurched as I clicked it open. Watcher. Do you see now? I didn't type anything. I was frozen. Watcher. We have been watching you for a long time. A pause. Watcher. Don't look behind you. My blood turned to ice. Don't look behind you. Of course, that made me desperately want to do exactly that. I could feel the silence of my apartment behind me like a presence. Was someone standing there right now, reading over my shoulder? The thought was an ice pick of terror in my mind. Slowly, stiffly, I began to turn my head, my neck cracking from tension. The room was dim. I had only a small lamp on in the corner. In the weak light, I saw nothing unusual. My tiny living room was empty. no figure looming in the shadows. I let out a shaky breath I'd been holding. Maybe it was a twisted joke. I turned back to the laptop and nearly screamed. On the webcam feed window that had popped up on the site, I saw myself sitting there, and behind me, clearly in the video feed, a dark figure stood. It was right where I had just looked, a tall form in black, featureless in the darkness, looming inches behind my chair. I only caught a split-second glimpse before the webcam light on my laptop clicked off and the feed went dead. But I'd seen it, and I saw my own face too. Eyes wide, mouth open, in a silent gasp of dread as I realized what was behind me. I shot out of my chair, sending the laptop clattering to the floor. I spun around wildly. Nothing. The room was empty. The door was still chained and bolted. No possible way anyone could have entered. And yet, I knew what I saw. Unless my mind was finally shattering under stress, someone had been right behind me. From the floor, my laptop began emitting a distorted noise, half static, half garbled voice. The same whisper from the earlier stream. "I see you." Only now it was louder, more insistent, filling my small apartment. I stared in horror as the laptop screen flashed. The site was cycling through images faster than I could really comprehend. My childhood home, a live shot of the outside of my apartment building, a close-up of my front door, a dim image of me sleeping in my bed, one I had never seen before. Picture after picture, all intimately mine. Over the blinding cascade of images, new text blared across the screen in harsh white letters. "We are already here." The darkness seeps in. I lost the ability to think rationally. In a blind panic, I lunged forward and yanked the power cord out of the laptop. I grabbed the whole thing and tore the battery out. The screen finally went black, and the horrific noise ceased. My apartment fell into dead silence, save for my own gasping breaths and the thunderous pounding of my heart. It was over. The computer was off. But the horror was far from ended, because whoever had done this knew where I lived, knew everything about me. How many times had I shrugged off the feeling of being watched while walking home at night? How often had I dismissed the hairs rising on my neck as paranoia? Now, I wasn't sure if those instincts had been right all along. I snatched up my phone to call someone, police, a friend, anyone. But the device wouldn't turn on. It had been fully charged. Now, it was dead, no matter how many times I tried restarting it. In a flash of irrational thought, I wondered, had they killed my phone remotely too? Or was this sheer terror making me clumsy? Hands shaking, I stumbled to my landline phone. Thank God I still had one for emergencies. No dial tone, just static. Or was that faint breathing I heard on the line? I almost flung the receiver away. Suddenly, the lights in my apartment flickered, plunging the room into a brief, total darkness. In that split second before they came back on, I saw, or thought I saw, a silhouette by the window. My stomach lurched. I grabbed a heavy flashlight from a drawer and clicked it on, shining the beam toward the window. Nothing there, just my curtains drawn tight. I was coming apart, seeing things that couldn't be there. Or maybe finally seeing what had been there all along. Either way, I couldn't stay. I had to get out, find help, or at least be around other people. I threw on a jacket, stuffed my ruined laptop in my backpack, some desperate part of me thinking it was evidence of this nightmare, and unchained the door. With a deep breath, I pulled it open. The hallway beyond was dark, every light out, except for the faint red glow of the exit sign at the far end. A power outage? Or had they cut the power here too? The quiet was oppressive. I stepped out, gently letting my door shut behind me, and called out softly, "Hello? Anyone?" My voice echoed back from the stairwell. No answer. I inched down the hall, flashlight shaking in my grip. I passed apartment 304. Usually, I could hear Mrs. Rodriguez's TV through the door at this hour, but it was silent. Further down, 307, where a young couple lived, no light, no sound. It was as if the whole building was emptied of life. Halfway to the exit, I nearly tripped over something on the floor. Regaining my balance, I shone my light down and saw a dark shape. A shoe. No, two shoes, with feet in them. A man lay sprawled on the carpet, eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. It was my neighbor, Chris, from 302. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. There was a thin line of blood running from his forehead, and his neck was bent at an impossible angle. Before I could process the horror, a soft creak sounded behind me. I whipped around and came face to face with someone standing inches away. I yelped, stumbling back. My light fell upon their face. It was the janitor, old Mr. Feldman. He raised a finger to his lips, gesturing for silence. "Mr. Feldman," I whispered shakily, hardly believing a familiar face in this nightmare. "Chris is... I think he's..." "I know," he replied in a trembling voice. "Keep your voice down. They're still here." They. That single word confirmed everything. I wasn't hallucinating. Something malevolent had invaded our lives. "You saw them," I managed, pressing against the wall next to him. He gave a terrified nod. "Just shadows moving in the dark." I heard screams, then nothing. I was checking if anyone... His eyes darted to my apartment door. "I'm glad you made it out." A clatter echoed from the stairwell, followed by slow, heavy footsteps ascending. Not just one set, several. They were coming back. A distorted voice drifted up the shaft, a warbling sing-song that froze my blood. "Where are you?" It was the same awful intonation I'd heard through my speakers, now echoing in the halls. Mr. Feldman gripped my arm. "We need to get out now," he breathed. "Fire escape." The only way to the fire escape was around the corner, past the stairwell door, toward the approaching footsteps. But we had no choice. Together we crept back the way I'd come, past my door, toward the bend in the corridor. A shadow stretched across the wall, a tall, spindly silhouette emerging from the stairwell. I stopped breathing. The figure came into view under the exit sign's glow, impossibly tall, limbs too long, and bent at odd angles. Its head swiveled, dark pits where eyes should be, sniffing the air. Behind it, another silhouette stepped into view, and another, 3, 4. I lost count. Mr. Feldman squeezed my arm, eyes pleading. He mouthed one word, "Run." The creatures turned toward us in unison. I saw the closest one cock its head, and the hint of a smile spread across its pale, featureless face. Then Mr. Feldman shoved me hard, snapping me out of my terror, and we bolted. We raced for the fire escape door at the end of the hall. A shriek of rage erupted behind us, and the sound of those skittering footsteps came like a stampede. Mr. Feldman fumbled with the push bar, yanking the door open, and practically threw me onto the metal fire escape platform. I grabbed his jacket and pulled him through, as a long arm swiped out of the darkness, barely missing his legs. We stumbled down the iron stairs, 2-3 steps at a time, Above, inky figures poured out the doorway like a swarm. The old metal groaned under their weight, the whole structure shaking. "Keep going," I shouted, though my voice was thin with panic. We hit the bottom and dropped into the alley behind the building. Without pausing, we sprinted through the alley and out onto the wet street. Rain pelted my face as we ran. I risked a glance back. Silhouettes were clustered at the mouth of the alley, but didn't seem to be giving chase onto the open street. They lingered just out of the light, watching. Mr. Feldman was gasping, clutching his chest. We slowed, then stopped a block away, both of us soaked and shaking. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought I might faint. But we were alive. It seemed the creatures, whatever they were, had stopped at the edge of the darkness. Perhaps bright light deterred them? The streetlights here were humming, bathing the intersection in a dull glow. They stayed to the shadows beyond. "It won't matter," Mr. Feldman wheezed between breaths. "We're already in their world now. No getting out." I refused to accept that. I had to believe escape was possible. "Come on," I urged him. "There's a 24-hour store over there. People, light." I pointed down the block where a neon sign flickered. Keeping to the illuminated part of the sidewalk, we hurried toward the store. I glanced over my shoulder every few seconds, but I saw nothing following, only rain-drenched emptiness. We made it inside the fluorescent bright convenience store and nearly collapsed with relief. The bored cashier gave us a strange look as we stumbled to the counter, dripping wet and wild-eyed. "Call the police," I blurted. "Please, we're being chased." The cashier, a 20-something guy with earbuds dangling, pulled them out, looking alarmed at our state. "Whoa, slow down. You okay? Chased by who?" "Just call," Mr. Feldman pleaded. "People have been hurt." Maybe it was our terror or something in our voices, but he picked up the phone with shaking hands and dialed. I sank to the floor, back against the counter, every muscle trembling now that I'd stopped running. As the cashier spoke urgently to 911, I stared at the glass front of the store. Beyond the dripping window, across the empty street, I could just make out dark shapes, gathering at the edge of darkness again. A dozen, at least. They didn't approach the glowing store, but I knew they were watching us. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cruisers squealed up. Red and blue lights slashed the night. To my immense relief, the shadowy figures were nowhere to be seen. They had melted away into whatever cracks they came from. We told the cops a fragmented story about a home invasion, a gang in masks attacking our building. I left out the supernatural details, sticking to people in costumes and murder spree. They dispatched units to the address and an ambulance. I insisted they check apartment 302 and the janitor's closet, giving them enough specifics to find the bodies. In the end, the police were baffled. They found the aftermath, several dead, others missing, but no sign of the assailants. They suspected a cult or gang, as we said. They didn't buy anything about websites or videos. Who would? I was too exhausted to press the issue. I gave a statement as best I could, and so did Mr. Feldman, and we were eventually released with advice to get somewhere safe and rest. We see you. I checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, one of those places with buzzing neon signs and threadbare curtains. It was all I could afford on short notice. I paid in cash. I didn't want any chance of being traced through credit cards, though I suspected it hardly mattered at this point. Maybe it was pointless. but it made me feel slightly less exposed. All day, I sat on the lumpy motel bed with the TV news droning. They reported the incident at my apartment building in the bland terms of an inexplicable crime. Police had no leads. Survivors, that word made me shudder, were being interviewed. I wondered what Mr. Feldman had told them after I left. I wondered if he was okay. As evening fell, anxiety gnawed at me. It wasn't over. Somehow I knew the distance I'd run wouldn't keep me safe. I kept peering out through the blinds at the nearly empty parking lot, jumping at every shadow or flicker of movement. That night, I left the lights on and the TV volume low as I lay fully clothed on the bed. Sleep felt impossible. Around 2 a.m., the television began to act up, flickering and warping. The late show I'd had on, distorted into static. My stomach clenched. I sat up, staring at the screen. The static began to form shapes. No, a picture. A grainy black and white feed of a small room. I recognized the ugly, flowery wallpaper. It was my motel room, shown from a high corner angle, as if captured by a security camera. But I knew for a fact, this cheap room had no security cam. On the screen, a figure sat on the bed. Me. I stood in the exact same moment, looking at the TV, watching myself watch myself. A soft hiss came from the TV's speakers. The angle on the screen began to pan, creeping closer to the me on the bed, zooming in on my back. I felt the hairs on my neck rise. In the TV feed, behind the me on the bed, the motel door crept open. The me on screen didn't notice. Through that opening door, a tall, dark figure slid into the room. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I didn't dare turn around to check the real door. I knew it was locked, bolted. But the TV was showing something else entirely. The me on screen still sat oblivious, even as the dark figure leaned over them from behind. I fumbled for the remote and hit the power button frantically. The TV snapped off, leaving the room in stark silence. My heart was a drumbeat in my ears. Slowly, I turned my head to glance at the door. It was shut, still bolted. No one there. A whisper broke the silence. "We've been watching you." I whirled around. The lights flickered, and they were there. 3, 4, 5 of them, stepping out of the dim corners of the rooms that should have been empty. How could they have been there? How could I not see them until now? My mind screamed questions that had no meaning anymore. I backed against the wall, but they were already surrounding me. One of the figures pressed a finger to where its lips might be, as if shushing me. I was too scared to even scream. Tears spilled from my eyes. My body was shaking uncontrollably. The figure closest to me tilted its head, almost in pity. From behind it, another shape stepped forward, raising something to eye level. In the dim light, I realized it was a camcorder. A camera, lens glinting red with a rec light. It was pointed directly at me. I was the show now. My terror was their entertainment. My downfall a piece of content for the next curious wanderer of the dark web to find. I felt the creature's icy hand move from the air to gently cradle my chin, tilting my face up toward its blank, inhuman visage. I squeezed my eyes shut, unable to look. In that darkness behind my eyelids, I saw flashes of everything that led me here. Every mistake, every click, every late night. I thought I was alone. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. The camcorder whirred softly, capturing my final moments. I understood at last. I had never been just an observer behind a screen. I had been watched from the very beginning, lured and led deeper. until I became the spectacle. As my vision began to swim and darkness closed in, I heard one of them whisper in my ear, gentle and inescapable, "We see you." I wake to the taste of blood in my mouth and the thundering ache of a headache. My eyes flutter open, but I only see darkness. For a moment, I wonder if I'm blind, until a faint strip of cold light hums to life above me. It barely illuminates the cramped space I'm in, painting long shadows on concrete walls. The air is damp and stale, carrying a smell like rust and decay. I'm sprawled on a hard floor. When I try to move, I find my wrists bound behind me with something rough. Zip ties, maybe. And my ankles are similarly restrained. Panic surges as the last hazy memory snaps into focus. The Watchers. I remember them bursting into my apartment. The sudden chaos of it. I had been at my computer, lost in the deepest corner of the internet. When they came, I didn't even have time to scream. A black-gloved hand clamped over my mouth, and I felt a sharp prick in my neck. Then everything went dark. Now I'm here, wherever here is, trapped by the very thing I was so desperate to uncover. A low electronic hum permeates the silence. As my eyes adjust, I make out the outline of a small surveillance camera high in one corner, its lens glinting red with a tiny recording light. It's watching me. Of course it is. I'm being watched always, aren't I? My heart hammers against my ribs. I struggle upright, wriggling until I can sit with my back against the damp wall. Every muscle protests. My mouth is so dry it hurts to swallow. "How long?" I whisper, voice cracking. "How long was I out? What day is it?" There's no window, no way to tell time. It could be hours or days since the Watchers took me. The thought sends a bolt of terror through me. No one knows I'm here. No one will come to save me. For a moment, I squeeze my eyes shut and try to steady my breathing. In the darkness behind my eyelids, images flash unbidden. Fragments of the nightmare I've stumbled into. I think back to how it all began. My foolish curiosity, my loneliness, how I wandered onto the dark web, looking for something, anything, to break the monotony of my isolated life. It started innocently enough, I tell myself. Late one night, I was hunched over in the pale glow of my monitor in my apartment. 4 small walls that had slowly become my entire world. I'd been feeling so alone. Most nights I would dive into internet rabbit holes just to distract from the quiet. That night, my aimless browsing took me further and deeper than ever before. Through forum chains and encrypted chat rooms, I followed whispers about a secret corner of the dark web. Rumors swirled of a hidden collective, known only as the Watchers. I recall the shaky excitement that ran through me reading about it. On an obscure message board for horror aficionados, one thread caught my eye. Anyone heard of the Watchers? Urban legend or worse? The replies were a mix of nervous jokes and ominous warnings. One user claimed it was just an ARG, or performance art, a spooky myth to scare newbies, but another insisted it was real, far too real. "If you value your life, stay away," they wrote. This isn't just a game. The Watchers are always watching. They find you. I should have listened. God, I should have listened. But I was bored, restless, craving something different. I thought it was probably a hoax, or if it wasn't, I wanted to see it for myself. Like peeking at a horror movie from behind parted fingers. After all, I spent so much time reading creepypastas and watching scary videos online that I thought I was immune to fear by then, numbed by routine and too many nights alone. I didn't realize that I was exactly the type of person it seeks out. The lonely, the curious, the unwary. So I ignored the warnings. With a pounding heart, I copied a Tor Onion link someone had jokingly posted as the front door to the Watcher's domain. It took a few tries. The URL was long, seemingly random gibberish. When it finally loaded, my screen went black. At first I thought I'd crashed my system. Then, a single line of red text appeared. "Do you feel alone?" With a blinking cursor. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. My room was dark, except for the glow of that question. "Do I feel alone?" My chest tightened. "Yes," I typed. Another line of text printed slowly, as if whoever or whatever was on the other side was considering me. "Do you want to see something secret?" A cold shiver skittered up my spine. This was probably a prank, I thought, or some interactive fiction. Yet after a long moment, I found myself responding with trembling hands. Yes. That was the moment I opened the door to it. At once, the screen filled with a cascade of images and video thumbnails. Some were too fleeting and distorted to make out, but others, I wish I could erase them from my mind. Grainy clips of people sitting alone at their computers. People who didn't know they were being recorded, I realized with a jolt. A video of a gaunt man rocking in a corner of a concrete room, much like the one I find myself in now, muttering to himself, while a chat box beside the video feed filled with comments. "More, make him cry, and this is live." Each feed winked out after a few seconds, switching to the next, like some demonic slideshow. I should have slammed my laptop shut right then. Instead, morbid fascination glued me in place. Another showed a close-up of a terrified woman's face, lit by a monitor's glow, tears streaming down as she whispered, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," over and over. The raw panic in her eyes was unmistakable. This wasn't a movie. It was real. There was a chat interface, filled with anonymous users all watching something. I didn't type anything, just scrolled, wide-eyed. My brain struggled to process what I was seeing. It looked like a live chat for viewers, like an interactive forum where people discussed whatever was happening on these video streams. They spoke in excited tones, as if watching a reality TV show or a sports match. Among the chat messages, I caught dark, coded phrases, references to the host and the game. Some users were betting cryptocurrency on the outcomes of something they called events. It dawned on me that these might not be pre-recorded videos at all. They were live streams, real people, in real time, being tormented for an audience lurking in the shadows of the dark web. My stomach churned with equal parts fear and disbelief. It had to be a sick joke, right? Some elaborate horror ARG? But a small voice in my head whispered that it was all too authentic. The raw desperation in those people's eyes was not acting. As I watched in horrified silence, a new message popped up privately on my screen, startling me. "Welcome, new watcher 342. Enjoying the show?" A private message. Someone had noticed me lurking. My throat went dry. The sender's username was just an unblinking eye icon. My blood ran cold. I didn't respond, hovering my cursor over the connection icon, debating whether to pull the plug and sever my link to this nightmare. Before I could move, another message came. "We see you." Attached was a file. It automatically began downloading before I could stop it. Curiosity killed the cat, they say. And yet, I clicked the file once it finished, some part of me rationalizing that I needed to know what it was. It opened to a photo of me taken through my own webcam mere seconds ago. In it, my eyes were wide, face half lit by the monitor's glow. It was the exact image of me sitting there at that moment. I reeled back so hard my chair nearly tipped. Terror like I've never known surged through me. They were watching me. Somehow they'd activated my webcam without me noticing. My laptop's camera light had been off the whole time. How was that even possible? I fumbled, slamming my laptop closed. Heart in my throat, I ripped the power cord out for good measure. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. For a long minute, I just sat in the dark, hyperventilating. My mind raced. Had I really just seen that? Was this some virus playing a twisted prank? But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The watchers were real, and I had caught their attention. I rushed around my apartment in a panic, as if I could escape their invisible gaze. I threw on the lights, checked the door lock, the windows. The silence in my room was deafening. No sound except my own ragged breathing. I remember grabbing my phone to call. Who? The police? What would I even tell them? That I clicked a forbidden link and now faceless cyber monsters were spying on me. They'd never believe it. And those warnings on the forum echoed in my head. They find you. I shut off my computer completely and shoved it under my bed, as though that could sever whatever connection had been made. Then I sat on my bed, with my back to the wall, staring at the laptop as if it were a coiled snake. I thought that maybe if I just stayed offline, they'd forget about me. That it might have been a fluke, just an automated script messing with voyeurs like me. Hours crept by. Eventually, exhaustion overcame adrenaline, and I drifted into a fitful sleep. That was the last peaceful sleep I ever had. I woke to a soft tapping sound. For a moment, I was disoriented in the darkness of my room, heart pounding from a half-remembered nightmare. Tap, tap, tap. There it was, again, coming from my front door. I glanced at my phone. It was 3:33 a.m. My blood turned to ice. Who would be here at this hour? I slid off the bed and crept toward the door, each step slow and silent. The tapping stopped. Holding my breath, I peered through the peephole into the hallway. At first, I saw nothing, just the dimly lit corridor of my apartment building. Then movement, shadow upon shadow. I staggered back as the peephole went dark, as if someone was pressing against it from outside. "Who's there?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. The silence pressed in, suffocating. I was about to bolt, maybe try climbing out the window, when, without warning, a crash came from behind me. My door flew open, the frame splintering. Two figures clad in black, from head to toe, surged in like living shadows. I remember a jolt of pain as I was slammed to the floor. I thrashed, screaming, but one of the intruders pinned my arms with an iron grip. Through the haze of panic, I caught a glimpse of a featureless mask, and behind it, eyes that gleamed with a mix of excitement and indifference. Then, a syringe glinted in the other intruder's hand. I felt a sting in my neck and warmth spreading, my limbs going heavy and numb. The last thing I heard as consciousness slipped away was a distorted voice close to my ear whispering, "Shh, the show is about to begin." Now the show has me as its star. A clanging sound jerks me out of the memory. Back in the present, in this cell, I realize I've been involuntarily rocking myself, my back scraping against the wet wall. My breathing is shallow and quick. I force myself to stop moving, straining to listen. Was that a door opening somewhere outside? The sound had a distant metallic echo. My heart leaps into my throat. Someone is coming. Or something. I find myself instinctively shrinking against the wall, as far from the door as possible. Seconds stretch to eternity. Then I hear it. A dragging, shuffling noise, just beyond the heavy steel door of my cell. A slot in the door, at eye level, bursts open with a clang, making me flinch. Blinding white light floods through the narrow opening, and I turn my face away, dizzy from the sudden brightness. I squint and can just make out a dark shape on the other side of the slot. The silhouette of a head, someone peering in. My blood turns cold. I can't make out any features against the glare. For a moment, neither of us speaks. I can hear my own pulse thudding in my ears. Then a voice crackles through unseen speakers in the ceiling. A flat, distorted electronic voice that seems to come from all around the room, echoing off the concrete. It's impossible to tell if it's a man or woman, or even human at all. The tone is calm, clinical, and it pronounces my name, my real name. Your name. Welcome. The voice rasps, sending a jolt of terror through me. It's the first time I've heard anyone speak since I woke here. I wonder if the figure at the door is speaking into a microphone to address me, or if the voice belongs to something else entirely. I swallow hard, throat parched. Please, I manage, my voice small and broken. Why are you doing this to me? I just stumbled in by accident. I won't tell anyone, I swear. Just let me go. My pleas spill out in a trembling rush. The silhouette remains motionless, but I hear a faint sound, like a chuckle being digitally garbled, as though the speaker laughed under their breath, and the sound got twisted by the modulator. Accident, the electronic voice repeats, dripping with mock sympathy. No, you were chosen. You followed the trail we left for you. So eager to see what lay hidden in the shadows. And now, here you are. My stomach drops. Chosen. The word hangs in the air like a death sentence. My mind races. Chosen for what? The show? Some twisted punishment? I shake my head vigorously, desperation rising. I didn't know what it was, I stammer. I was just curious, that's all. I didn't hurt anyone. My words come out high-pitched, on the verge of a sob. The figure on the other side tilts its head slightly, as if regarding a puzzling specimen. The speaker voice continues, merciless and eerily devoid of emotion, curious and alone. Willing to go where you shouldn't. You fit the pattern perfectly. Did you think you found us on your own? No. We found you. A sickening realization blooms. Every step of the way, I'd thought I was making my own choices. The late-night browsing, the forum thread, the link. But what if it had all been laid out before me, bait on a hook? The voice seems to sense my dawning comprehension. It continues, we know you, your name. We know the emptiness that gnaws at you, the countless nights you spend awake, aching for something to fill the void. The internet is a wondrous tool for observing the lonely. Algorithms, patterns. You've been on our radar for some time. It was only a matter of a little nudge here and there, an enticing post, a tantalizing hint, and you came tumbling right down the rabbit hole, just as we knew you would. As it speaks, my eyes finally adjust enough to focus through the slit. A single eye is visible peering back at me. A human eye, I think, though the way it stares is so predatory and cold that it might as well belong to a wolf. I shudder and avert my gaze. My thoughts churn, equal parts terror and guilt. Every digital footprint I've left, every late-night search, every lonely form rant about how empty I felt. Was it all cataloged by them? The notion that this entity had been watching me long before I ever found it, that it had studied and targeted me, sends a fresh wave of nausea through my gut. What are you? I whisper, more to myself than to the unseen watcher. For a moment, nothing. Then the speaker clicks on again. The voice that answers almost sounds gentle, contemplative. Do you know how many wanderers like you drift through the web every day? It asks softly. Lost souls seeking meaning or thrill. They are like fireflies on a summer night. And we are the spiders who weave our nets in the dark. I shudder at the imagery, but I stay quiet, letting it continue. Our origin was born from that hunger, the voice muses. Years ago, a small group found each other on the early internet, strangers sharing the same itch for the unknown. They were harmless at first, telling ghost stories, trading conspiracies, dabbling in secrets. But the more they fed that itch, the more it grew. They wanted real fear, real power over others, the thrill of not just watching horror, but creating it. A numb sickness settles in my stomach. I picture them, the progenitors of this nightmare, faceless usernames in some forgotten chat room, testing boundaries and finding none. They started small, the voice continues, a shared video of a cruel prank here, an anonymous harassment of a target there, feeding off the victim's distress from the shadows. But anonymity breeds audacity. It wasn't long before they dared each other further, to find someone truly vulnerable to toy with in person. The first was a homeless man, lured by an online post promising food. They live-streamed as they scared him out of his wits. Nothing too physical. That time. The rush they felt, seeing the viewer count tick up, reading the excited comments, was intoxicating. My stomach churns with disgust. I can see how each new line crossed made the next one easier. My hands clench into fists, nails digging into my palms. The group realized they were not alone in their appetite. The voice says, an almost reverent note creeping in. There were others out there hungry to watch, willing to pay for the privilege. So the group grew. It transformed into something else. They called themselves the Watchers, as a joke at first, aware of the irony that by watching others, they too were being consumed by this obsession. Over time, it stopped being a joke. It became a creed. The world, through their eyes, split into two kinds of people: watchers and the watched, predators and prey, those with power and those under their gaze. They decided which side they would rather be on. They moved into the dark web, where they could flourish without interference. They built secret sites, like the one you stumbled into, recruited tech experts, hackers, anyone who could contribute to an empire of voyeuristic terror. They even crafted programs, algorithms to trawl the endless data streams and find the perfect candidates. People unlikely to be immediately missed. People who showed the very traits that would lead them right into our trap. Lonely hearts, depressed bloggers, illicit thrill seekers, like moths to a flame. They all come to us, eventually. My face burns with shame and fear. I fit their profile perfectly. If I hadn't fallen for this, someone else would have. Someone just like me. The thought offers no comfort, only a horrible kinship with countless other victims. I swallow hard. Are you one of them? One of the founders? I whisper. A pause. I am the voice that speaks for them, it answers, evasive. An embodiment of our will. Individual identities are meaningless here. All that matters is the role we play. I don't fully understand, but I don't press. They call you the Watchers, I say slowly, a spark of defiance making me bold. But you also watch each other, don't you? You and your viewers. You're as trapped as the ones you torment. The laugh that crackles through the speaker is chilling. Trapped? Oh no. We revel in it, the voice replies, suddenly laden with cold amusement. We have embraced our nature fully. Can you say the same? Isn't that what drew you to us? Deep down, a desire to see what shouldn't be seen. Perhaps a dark part of you even longed to be seen, to have your pain witnessed, to make you feel real. You're wrong, I murmur, but even I hear the doubt in my voice. Another brief static hiss, perhaps a sigh. It doesn't matter, the voice says, dismissive. The wheels are already in motion. The audience is eager. We gave them a taste of your fear and they want more. You tried to run, and that just made the show all the more thrilling. But now, it's time for the final act. My heart plummets. Final act. My attempted escape, likely hurried along whatever fate they have planned for me. A whimper escapes my throat. They mean to end it. End me soon. No, no, please, I beg hoarsely, not even sure whom I'm pleading with. You don't have to do this. You could let me go and I'd disappear. I'd never tell a soul. I would just vanish. I'm babbling. I know it's pointless even as I say it. A burst of harsh static, almost like an exasperated exhale. There is no vanish, the voice snaps. Every person we let slip away would be a loose thread, undermining the whole tapestry. No, there's only one way this ends for you. It continues calmer now. But take solace. Your demise will bring so many together in revelry. In a way, you'll finally touch more lives than you ever imagined. They will all be watching you. My stomach heaves. It's vile, a mockery of the human need for connection that got me here in the first place. Where I wanted understanding and friendship, I get an audience lusting for my death. Suddenly, the main lights go out, plunging the cell into near-total darkness. Only the faint red glow from the camera's indicator remains, a tiny pinprick in the black. I freeze, every muscle taut. I can't see the slot anymore, or the figure behind it. I sense movement in the dark, a presence in the room with me. How? I didn't hear the door open. Terror claws up my throat. I try to scramble backward, but I'm already pressed against the wall. Out of the blackness, a shape emerges, a face inches from mine. No, not a face. That featureless white mask with the crudely painted grin. I gasp, but a gloved hand clamps over my mouth, smothering the sound. I thrash weakly, but another set of hands grips my shoulders. There are two of them in here with me. Through the hood's fabric, I hear the hissing of a small radio device. A distorted voice issuing a single command. Bring him. I'm too weak and stunned to resist, as they yank a heavy hood over my head, plunging me into an even deeper, smothering darkness. The coarse material scratches against the cut on my cheek, making me wince. I feel tape being wound around my neck, securing the hood in place. I can barely breathe through the thick fabric. Strong hands hoist me up under the arms. My legs drag as they carry me out of the cell. I hear the door clang shut behind us. I'm utterly blind. I can't tell where they're taking me, only that the air changes, cooler, with a faint antiseptic smell. and the floor turns from concrete to something like metal grating. After a minute or an hour, it's impossible to sense time. We stop. A heavy door creaks open. I'm half dragged over a threshold and then roughly dumped onto a hard surface. It feels like a chair bolted to the floor. They fasten straps over my arms, my chest, my legs. Within moments, I'm pinioned completely. My heart is jackhammering. I can scarcely draw breath inside the suffocating hood. I let out a muffled whimper. With a sudden yank, the hood is torn off. Brilliant light assaults my eyes. I blink, tears streaming as I struggle to focus. I'm in a larger room now, maybe some kind of warehouse space. Concrete walls and high ceilings, lost beyond the glare of a spotlight trained directly on me. I can't make out the edges of the room, but I sense it's big and that I'm on some kind of small stage or platform. My chair is centered under the spotlight. I squint against the light, panic rising anew. I hear shuffling sounds around me. Although I can't turn my head much, I glimpse movement to my right. A camera on a tripod, a red light on. To my left, another camera, or perhaps a person standing just out of sight. I realize this is it, the stage for the final show. For a few seconds, nothing happens. Just me strapped to the chair, blinking into the blinding spotlight. The anticipation itself is torture. Then, from somewhere beyond the light, a figure steps forward. My breath catches. It's another watcher, but this one is different. Taller, wearing a more refined attire, a long black coat, and that smooth white mask covering their face entirely. No crude smile drawn on this one. It's blank, except for two dark eye holes. In their hand, they carry a small remote or control device. They regard me in silence for a moment. I can't see their eyes, but I feel their gaze sweeping over me, observing my trembling, sweat-drenched form. I open my mouth to plead again, but no sound comes out beyond a ragged exhale. The masked figure turns slightly, addressing not me, but the darkness beyond the light. When they speak, the voice that comes out is the same distorted one from the cell's speaker, only now emanating from a portable voice box or modulator on their person. It echoes through the space, amplified for all to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice purrs, full of cruel delight. Our special presentation reaches its climax. Our guest of honor has been quite feisty, but as you can see, he is finally ready to embrace his part in the grand finale. A burst of sound erupts from all around. Cheers, jeers, clapping. I realize with horror that it's the audience, the watchers, reacting in real time. Whether it's being piped in through speakers or it's an imagined cacophony in my head, I can hear them. They're celebrating this. The figure in the spotlight with me steps closer and slowly circles my chair, one gloved hand trailing along the top of the metal frame. I flinch as they pass behind me, then reappear on the other side. With an almost gentle gesture, they tilt my chin up, forcing me to look into the blinding light. I'm vaguely aware of one of the cameras zooming in. I hear the servo whine. "Do you have any last words?" The distorted voice asks me conversationally, as if this is an interview and not an execution. My throat works, but all that comes out is a broken sob. Last words. What do you say when you know nothing you do will make a difference? Somewhere, behind that light, hundreds of people are watching my final moments, eager and anonymous. A surge of anger momentarily pierces my fear, a desperate need for answers, for meaning. I choke back a sob and instead scream into the void. Why? Why are you doing this? We're human beings. How can you enjoy this? My voice echoes raggedly in the open space. What is wrong with you people? My outburst rings into the emptiness. For a heartbeat, there's silence. Then a crackling of laughter from the unseen speakers, some of the audience, amused by my futile question. I hear a few shouted responses, distant and tinny. Because it's fun. One man hoots. Another voice, female, hisses, scream louder. Tears of humiliation prick my eyes. The masked figure cocks their head at me. Though I cannot see their face, I sense a sneer behind that blank facade. They lean in, inches from my ear, and speak softly. So softly that if it weren't amplified, I might not catch it. We do this because we can, because no one stopped us, because deep down, this is the truth of the world. It's our show, and people like you exist to make it interesting. They straighten up and step away. In the harsh light above, I see something metallic glint. I force my eyes to focus upward. There, mounted on some sort of rig directly above me, is a large curved blade attached to a mechanical arm, like a scythe poised to fall. A weak whine escapes my throat. My entire body starts to shake uncontrollably, the straps creaking with the strain. The masked figure lifts the remote device in their hand and presses a button. The mechanical arm whirs to life, the blade beginning a slow, deadly descent toward the top of my head. The cheers of the crowd swell to a fever pitch. The camera lights blink. They don't want to miss a single moment. I squeeze my eyes shut, sobbing openly now. Time seems to slow to a crawl. Thoughts flicker through my mind like a dying film reel. I think of my lonely nights, of the endless scrolling on forums that led me here. I think of the others who came before me, those faces on the screens. Is this where they ended up too? My last thoughts? A futile wish that somehow, somewhere, this nightmare means something. That maybe my story serves as a warning to others. Don't stray too deep into the darkness, because something might be looking back. I clench my teeth, close my eyes. In my mind, I see that blinking text from the website again. We see you. And I finally understand the full, dreadful meaning of it. There is a whoosh of metal through air, and then darkness. Thank you for listening to the entire story. Please comment and let me know which part of the world are you listening from. Share the video and subscribe to my channel.